There you go.
Good morning, everyone. Uh, it's Saturday morning, a little after 10. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I trust Pastor will join us in a little bit if he has opportunity. Uh, we'll start off as we normally do to see if we have any questions. Questions and or comments or uh, something that you may have seen this week. Anyone? Okay.
Ron, Ron,
Yes, ma'am.
this this is Kathy.
Hey.
I had talked to Reverend Richards about this at one point, but I keep seeing images in the sky, in the clouds,
Mm-hmm.
and the faces are actually so clear that you could see them so good. And this yesterday, it was one in the form of a. It looks like a body, a whole. I usually see the face, but this time I actually seen the whole body, the face and the body. The body, it looked. It wasn't like where you could see the legs. It was like they. It was in a robe, and it was long and it was stretched across the sky. And it's always in the same place. I can sit on my front porch and I could see him over the like where Walmart is at. You could see it stretched across the sky. So what are your thoughts on that?
Actually, Kath, I'm not trying to be funny, but I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on it? What do you see in that? What was your first initial reaction when you saw this? What did you feel?
Well, the first one I saw, it looked like a puppet's face. And well, I didn't get no thought on that one, but this last one that I saw the other day, it was like, we say angels, but we know that we don't have, well, I say that they are angels, but it looked in the form of like an angel that we see like in a book or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that one made me think that the thought that came to my mind that I'm watching over you. But now there have been some that look kind of ugly, and I was like, every time I would see it, it was like a storm or something would happen. Tragedy would happen. We would have a shooting here in Gaffney, or something would happen somewhere else, a tragedy. But I haven't heard of anything so far as this one what I saw yesterday. So that's really all I can tell you.
And that's the kind of thing I was thinking about, and hopefully someone else has a thought on this as well. Because you're the one seeing it, I was wondering if the message to you, and that's why I was asking you, what do you see and feel when you see these things? Is it bring about a pleasant feeling to you, or something pleasurable, or do you see something else? So yeah, I think you kind of answered it, and I was reading something years ago that one of those books that it wasn't Josephus, but what it talked about is being righteous, and the righteous, you have the right to, when you see dreams or have dreams or you see things, you have a right to interpret them. You have a right to look at them and see what they mean if you see things as for mankind. So when I say ask you that, I'm not trying to throw it back at you. I was really, really curious about what did you see and feel when you saw these things. So that's just interesting to me. Anyone else? Any other thoughts or comments on this?
What was the question?
Oh, about the image. That I sent you one yesterday where you could see the whole body and like they had a robe on. And I'm constantly, it's like I'm seeing them now. I'm seeing them more often. It's like every week or every 2 weeks, I'm seeing them in the sky.
Okay. What was your response when Ron asked you what did you feel? when you saw it?
I told him at first when I saw the puppies, I didn't really know about the puppies. It looked like a puppy's face, and one looked like a pig's face. But the one yesterday, now I haven't seen the whole body, but yesterday when I saw the whole body, now that I felt a peace about that one. It's like I'm watching over you, and it brought back to memories where it's been quite a few years ago. I saw in a vision where I saw an angel that we call angels that was at the foot of my bed, and I was going to the doctor, and this girl had said that I had breast cancer, and that bothered me. And when I went to bed that night, I was saying, Lord, don't let me have breast cancer. And I saw this like an angel at the foot of my bed, but I saw no face. And it was a long white robe, and the hands was down and said, peace be still. God will take care. And it said it 3 times. So it brought back to memories that there was a peace that I'm watching over you all. I'm watching over the city. And that's all I really felt with that one yesterday. But the puppy face and looked like the pig's face, that I don't know. But like I told Ron, every time I would see those images, it would be shootings here, or it would be a tragedy happen somewhere else. Something would happen somewhere.
But yesterday you saw peace.
Uh-huh.
That's your answer.
Yeah.
You were shown that for a reason, but it doesn't just pertain to our Gaffney. It pertains to humanity, because messages sometimes are indeed individual. There are many times, most of the time, they are for humanity. Were you going to say something around before I address?
Well, all I was going to say is that's part of the questions at the beginning of our sessions. We are becoming really, really sensitive to what happens around us. And so keep your eyes and your ears open, especially for things that seem to be what we call abnormal, things that, like that you give thought to, or you look at. It has a meaning to it. So there are messages in the earth, messages that the atmosphere, the universe wants us to see. And there are even times, as we learn who we are and embrace it, there are things that, as Kathy mentioned, that may be disastrous that we can intervene on. Like when we talked years ago, we used to talk about storms and hurricanes and whatnot. So just remember that you are the eyes and ears for mankind. So these sort of things at this point should not be surprising to us.
And the strangest thing is it's always in the cloud. It's never when the sun is shining. It's always when a cloud is forming in the sky. Most of the time it was during the evening time or before dark, and that's when I see them.
Okay.
Hey, this is Nick. I wanted to respond to that as well, actually. Just to say that oftentimes the symbols that we see are either in dreams or in meditative states, and which is the state that you're in when you're looking at the sky or just sitting on the porch. They're sort of tailored to our own experience. So if you see a particular image, one of the keys to decoding it for yourself is to think about how that image makes you feel and where in your life you may have seen something similar or felt something similar. Because when we're dealing with dreams or symbolism that we see in other states of consciousness, it is very often a message that is filtered through our own subconscious, and all of the emotional, all of the experiential things that we built up in our subconscious give color to that image, to that symbol. So I just wanted to add that in case you ever sort of realize if there's like a clear feeling or connection to an experience that you've already had that the image triggers within you, that can help with its specific meaning.
Okay.
So what I hear saying, I'm sorry, Pastor, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ron.
Now, all I was going to say is what I hear you saying then is when we learn to embrace these things, it brings about a deeper meaning. It opens up to a deeper awareness.
If we realize the opportunity, yeah.
I think that's why Nick not been realizing the opportunity always to understand. What I was heading in the same direction as you, conscious images. That's exactly where that angel thing comes from. It's funny that the word angel comes from that we use comes from the King James version, where you translated malach as angel, because they took it from the Greek angelo, and in some places that same word is translated as apostle. However, in the Hebrew, the original language of the Hebrew originally, with that word that has been wrongfully translated as angel, it means to be sent to do someone else's business. And it speaks to the idea of being sent to do the business of our Creator. And the reason we see those images, as Nick was talking about, those angelic beings, is because it's in our subconscious. We have been inundated all our lives with these forms being angelic, as opposed to knowing what it really means. So when we get a message, an apparition, and there are words attached to it, then we are being told, or we're being sent to take care of the business, the spiritual business that needs to be handled in this earth. And with that, the image at the foot of the bed is there because the apparition is there because that's what's in our minds, and it helps to reinforce the message that you will get without seeing anything. Because when we hear, sometimes we doubt whether or not what we're hearing is what we are saying to ourselves or whether it is real. However, now that we are understanding the difference in hearing in our minds and hearing in our soul, because we're getting a greater clarity between them, and now we will begin to have less sightings of apparitions of angelic bodies or beings, because honestly, when our minds are clear of those things, we don't see them anymore because we trust the voice. When Abraham was sitting at the tent, the messenger came to him, the malach came to him. Abraham was being told what was supposed to happen, and his responses were not verbal. His responses were internal. He was having a conversation with Elohim, and the message that he was responding to was his spiritual essence responding to its creator. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
I'm trying to understand it.
What I'm saying is this. King James Version is based on the Greek translation. It is not based on the translation from the Hebrew. No one translated from the Hebrew correctly, except recently, because they based it on the Greek translations. And the Greek translations, the mind of a Greek is no different than the mind of any other European. They made things be what they wanted it to be. And no one had any idea of a angel showing up in human form until the Europeans, the Greeks began to translate the scriptures to the Hebrew. When it talks about Malak, there's nothing in their minds that shows them an angel. They just hear a message. They know that they've received a message. And the reason it's so hard for us to understand is because we have been taught by the church, we have been taught in education that there are no apparitions. And when they talk about angels, they always talk about angels in the form of a man. The only angels we really have seen most of our lives is that little chubby angel at the Sistine Chapel that Michelangelo painted. However, none of those paintings appear in the Eastern world because they understand it's no different than me calling you and saying on the phone, Kathy, I need you to I need you to observe this message, observe the clouds today, because there's a message in it. You didn't see me, but you observed those clouds. Why did you observe those clouds? Because something in you told you to observe those clouds. Am I right?
Yes.
So, did you see me tell you to observe the clouds? No. You heard it. And that's the voice of our Creator speaking to us. And I don't like that word voice because that lends itself to something audible. That's the impression that we experience, and we obey it. And there are times we don't because we just can't believe it's true. Does that help you?
Yes, yes.
So what did you do with it? You showed up this morning to take care of the business of the one who impressed it upon you that you need to look at that cloud. And when you did it, you came today with what you saw, and you did that business. And the question is, what did it mean to you? Because the answer is within you. You said peace. So that in itself speaks volumes to what we are in search of. Not in search of, I'm sorry, what our desires are, and that is peace and harmony. Does that make sense? Oh.
There's a feeling that's coming over me now. And when I get that sense of peace, it's like, I always have that one eye that always cries.
Yeah.
And out that one eye. And the strangest thing about the whole thing is I'm never sitting on the porch. Sometimes, most of the time, I'm in the house. But it would be like at a certain time every day, look at your phone and my camera catches them. So that's how the majority of them I'm seeing is I see them on the Arlo. But it always comes to me, look at your pictures. And I don't delete them all at one time. I delete most of them, but like in the evenings, those are the ones where I have to stop and look at them.
Okay. Because even in the scriptures where it says on the seventh day, on the Sabbath, he ceased to work, it actually says that on the seventh day, he finished his business. That's what it actually says. But in the Hebrew, that word is malakah, which means business. Okay?
Okay.
Anyone?
Pastor. Good morning. This is Kathy. I wanted to add something to that, not necessarily about the images itself, but I was sharing with Linda when I heard what Kathy was saying this morning that when I go out to water for her, I go out at 7:30 in the morning to water, and I'm always like, it's hot out here. I don't want to be out here. I'm trying to get it done and move on. It takes me about an hour and a half to water. And this morning I was out on the front, just watering the flowers, looking down, and I heard from the inside, look up. And when I looked up, just the expansive sky that I could see, the clouds were this vivid, beautiful blue. And as I stood there, I got lost in the clouds in my thoughts and just feeling a connectedness and just a oneness with the universe. And then this deep, abiding peace. And I was telling Linda, I was like, you know what? It wasn't so bad watering the flowers today. I had a good experience because usually it hit me. You are looking at the flowers, you're looking down. But when you're out, you never look up. But today, and I think that's part of the conversation we're having now. For me, I realized I rarely look up. I'm always busy. I'm doing stuff. I'm going, but just to stop and look up today connected me with everything. And I just wanted to share that because for me, the experience was I didn't see an image, but I felt the peace and I felt the unicity of the oneness of just stopping and looking up. And I just wanted to share that this morning. So thank you.
Good morning, Pastor. Go ahead.
Good, Joe.
I just wanted to, relate to what has been said thus far in reference to looking up and in terms of pictures. And I had an experience when I was just walking through nature and I saw a tree that was rooted that had fell down. And I looked at the bottom, of the tree, and it was a humongous tree. And at that time, something just said, take a picture of it. So I took a picture of it, and I just kept moving about in reference to, my day and my walk. And when I had a chance to, be still and look at the picture, I saw, an image of a face. I saw, the eyes. I saw the nose. I saw it very vividly. And what I was just thinking about in terms of what Kathy was saying is how nature speaks to us. And when we think about the sun, giving, off melanin and just being able just to appreciate, just the energy that's being transferred, it just made me think how a picture speaks 1,000 words, but a symbol speaks 1,000 pictures. And so in the pictures that we see, or the images that we might be able to bear witness to, it's a sense, I think sometimes of protection. It's a sense of making us being able to appreciate how nature teaches us. So I just wanted to share those thoughts because I think, again, in our own visualization of what we see and what we hear, when we think about it, in terms of just our intuition again, I think the universe is protecting us. The universe is healing us. And so I'm just, grateful to hear some things being shared in reference to visualization and images. I'm done, Pastor.
Thank you. Ron,
Yes.
I think this is a type of segue into something that you mentioned. The reason I say that is because I have a very, very strong feeling that we are being told to be more observant because we're going to receive messages, as did those who are mentioned in the scriptures. Messages about where we are on our journey, messages about what is to come, messages that will guide us to this place of destiny, of peace and harmony. I do believe that things have become so so violent and so distant from our Creator and the face of our Creator until we are going to have to be more focused on the world around us. If we think about the scriptures, what we will find there is a large majority of the messages that were sent through nature. And the observance of nature is what guided Abraham and others through the wilderness. Not just the wilderness in the earth, but I'm talking about the wilderness that's internal. And there were guideposts that were used in nature to make sure that the trek was the right path. And keep in mind also that Abraham's descendants followed the same pathway as he once they set out on their journey. Thank you. Claire, Ron. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's the thing that you had mentioned in terms of the earth itself, right?
Yes, sir. And I agree. I think this is a sign to us to be more observant and showing us, because this is amazing to me, what everybody is seeing, and it kind of does fuel where something I saw myself, and hopefully this makes sense to you. It's kind of a supposition, and I it's one of those things that I see something but I don't see it, and I just thought we kind of talk about it a little bit. I want to read Genesis for you, and then we want to talk about this a little bit, because it made me, as Pastor said, see Genesis and the scriptures a little differently. Chapter 1 of Genesis says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, and darkness over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said, let there be." Then God said, let there be. I want to hold right there for a minute. Then in same chapter, verse 8, and said, God called the expanses heaven, and there was evening and morning. It was the second day. Then God said, let the waters below the heavens be gathered into the one place, and let the dry ground appear. And it was so. And that's the part that kind of catches me a little bit. When in the beginning, because of our religious background, we see, and God created that first verse, and God created the heavens and earth. We see a physical body. We see a heavenly body, earthly body, but we don't see heaven. We don't have an image of heaven, but we have an image of the earth. And I as we have studied this a number of times, I think that image, of course, is erroneous. But I want to tie it together too. I flipped all the way to Revelations 21, and I'm just going to read this first verse, and I'm going to talk a minute. It says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there was no longer any sea, and there was no longer any sea." So I want to talk about that for a minute, because I had a thought that came to me. There is a new island that formed off of the coast of North Carolina. It's called Shelley Island, and they scientists are looking, and of course, everything that happens in the earth has a very practical reason that happened, and they're tying this to earthquakes and volcanoes and the shifting of the ground in the depths of the earth and that sort of thing. And of course, all that is, I believe, is true. But we are looking at things from a spiritual perspective. And it got me to looking at things a little closer. And what scientists are now looking at and studying, in the 20th and 21st century, there have been a number of islands popping up all over the world. And for example, Shelly Island took place in 2017, 2018 when they first noticed it. So these islands are popping up, and of course, they're looking at it from a scientific perspective and saying that the volcanoes and the earthquakes and whatnot have are the reasoning for these things happening. And for anyone who's a naysayer, I also recognize that islands come and go, and that has always been the case. Not just these, but you see the erosion of soil, you see sea levels rise and that sort of thing. But this seems to be something a little more that has gotten some attention here lately. So from that perspective, I was looking because I think it's a sign, and it made me look at Genesis, particularly because what I see in Genesis is this glob of water, if you will, in verses 1 and 2 of Genesis, does not begin to take any form until we read, then God said, let there be. And so what I see in that is, if you look at thoughts and sound as vibrations, the earth does not take form until there's vibrations. So these islands that are popping up, whether you look at them from that practical perspective, that's up to you. But I like to think of it as the vibrations of the earth has a lot to do with what we're seeing now. So I did not read whether those islands are inhabitable, take on life form, people can live on them, make them, that kind of thing. But I just found it very interesting because, again, the earth, the ground does not pop up out of this water. So I see this as the physical earth being sort of a template for what was really to come, and that was the new heaven and the new earth. So we are looking at this template and trying to figure out, we're struggling to bring form to it. And the reason why I read that in Revelations, that there are no more seas, or whatever the water represents in the earth, because we talk about the deep, we're talking about the turning the water into wine, that life form that is represented. I think that is what it is saying, is when you see and understanding who you are, that type of life form will no longer be needed, because there will be nothing more mysterious to you. You will no longer maybe operate or be just as a human, as Elohim. You don't need that. So I think there's something more to this, and that's kind of me laying it out. And I know I'm forgetting something, but what do you guys see in this? What are your thoughts or questions?
Hey y'all, this is Nick. I just wanted to say that speaks to the sort of true spiritual and metaphysical environment that we are in that we are immersed within a sort of 3D vibration. And just like you were saying, Ron, but when particular events, when groups of people, when anything has enough influence over that vibration, either coming from us or coming directly from outside, quote unquote, in the realm of spirit, we begin to be influenced by that vibration all the more. And I think that's part of why it's more likely that we'll see and experience these kind of symbolic and quote unquote supernatural things as time progresses, because the nature of the vibration of this sort of 3D space that we are occupying becomes more and more I don't want to say violent or chaotic, but it becomes more active.
Yeah.
And depending on our own thoughts and intentions, we can sort of guide that activity, as we've always talked about. But I just wanted to add that.
But Nick, not only guide, not only guide it, but can we be responsible for it? And take on, maybe it awaits us to take on a more active role. Here's what I'm saying. Those clouds were meant for Kathy, and I think Kathy was responsible for them in a way that she doesn't see yet, because we still don't see ourselves as the spiritual beings that we are. We not the wholeness of that. Let me clarify that. Not the wholeness and understanding that. 100 people or more passed by that fallen tree, but only George took the picture and saw more into it. That tree fell for George. It may have fell 50 years ago, but it fell for George, that George was going to come by there that day. George may have even caused that tree to fall so that he could see the message in the roots. Same thing with Kathy. All those things happen, and 100 people pass their house every day and see the flowers, and probably what, 200-300 houses in that vicinity, but nobody else looked up and saw what she saw. So I see this as not only being a part of nature, but also being the influencer of what we see and create. And that's why the emphasis on God saying, let there be. It's not so much the wording of it, as Pastor was saying previous, but it's the vibration from it. Remember the lesson we did on leprosy? Leprosy only means that you cannot feel vibrations. So the earth is primarily, the leadership of the earth anyway, are lepers. They cannot feel the vibrations of this. So I agree with what Nick is saying. I agree with what everybody said this morning about the things that they saw. But I'm thinking, just as we're ushering in the new earth, and I think that's what these islands are about, I think you ushered in those things that you saw through your vibrations.
So Ron, a question. So would it be fair to say, are you saying that we're the source of these vibrations? Can we be one of the sources of the vibration that's taking place?
That's exactly
what we're.
Yes. I'm sorry, yes, I cut you off. Go ahead. I thought you were done.
Yeah. Because we're speaking and we're creating and we're expanding. We're doing a lot. So I think you were kind of. I just want to be clear that you're really saying, hey, we are, for the most part, the source of the vibration as well.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yes, we are the source of the vibration, and as I'm saying, the earth is still taking form. The earth is still being shapen. And in the beginning, God created that. We see this as a created ball, a created, but that's not the case. When you look at that carefully, there was no form to it. So it is the vibration of let there be, the thought, the voice, or the sound, in rhythm with Elohim that creates form. And I think part of the islands coming and going and the emergence of all these new islands, we are fighting against a force. We're fighting against a force that has always been in the earth. And that energy, we don't yet realize that we are an overwhelming force, not to be think of it in that manner as to say, "Oh, I'm going to take something from you," but I'm saying the mere existence of energy moving in two different directions creates violence. So when I talk about, when science talks about the earthquakes and the volcanoes that are causing these islands, that it may very well be in a practical sense because of the energy moving against the flow of the universe that we have becoming a part of. So I see this as something a lot bigger than I can probably wrap my mind around right now. But I think it fits in, as Pastor said, what is being said with the three examples that we had at the onset.
Ron.
Ron, I have a comment. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, the events that everybody has seen, the two Kathys and I think George, are those not burning bush experiences? Is it the same as having a burning bush experience?
I think very much so, Evelyn. And that's a good observation. Pastor, you want to speak more to that, please?
Yes, I really do.
Yeah.
Because it says that it burned was not consumed, which means that he had to watch it for a few minutes. You know, he had to see it, as opposed to just stopping because it was burning and moving on. To see that it was not being consumed was indicative of the time that he spent watching it, observing it. So I think very much so, Ellen.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. I want to interject something into the conversation about the formation of these islands. I do believe that it is due to the vibration that is being emitted from those who are searchers of truth and peace and love and kindness. And the reason I say that is because the word earth in the Hebrew, eret, has as a root, rat, and that means, that root word means to be in pieces. And it's in pieces as though a clay pot was broken, and each piece was used to write a letter or as a opportunity for somebody to write something on rather than just throw it away. Could it possibly be that these river crossers, these Africans who are crossing the rivers, not the rivers literally, but beginning to see life more clearly, could it possibly be that the reason they said it was Yvette, which is earth, that they understood that there were tectonic plates beneath the earth that were in pieces, and the shifting of these plates changes the form of the earth. And could it possibly be that the shifting is indicative of the shift that's taking place in terms of the energy, and the islands that are popping up are speaking to us about the reformation or the reforming of the earth. The idea of creation body also has as its meaning to be fattened or to be filled. And so these spaces are being filled with these islands, but they are only speaking to the empty space, the spaces that were void of spiritual understanding or desire or spiritual wisdom. And something else I see here is that instead of speaking let there be light, it really says that light will exist, and it existed. So it's more emphatic than let there be, because let there be means allow this to happen. who would the Creator be asking to allow something to happen? So it's more emphatic than that. And we have to be just as emphatic as the Creator is. And in that, the existence of these new islands are indicative of the desires of those who are in the process of creating a new earth or bringing forth a new earth. In the process of reforming the earth from its violent nature to the nature of peace and harmony. And the response to that are not only the islands, but the messages that Catherine with the K, Catherine with the C saw. These are, and the roots of that tree that George saw. These are indicative of our desires. Why is it that all of these things are coming together today? And why is it that two females and a male had the input about what they saw and were able to offer some sense of what it meant to them, what they were seeing? I do believe that right now we have this opportunity not only to continue this journey, but as we continue the journey, to begin to see the reformation of the earth itself, meaning the reformation of all of that's created in this earth, the physical forms in this earth being conformed to the desires of those who are on the journey in search of truth. And the more we recognize that, and the more we embrace it, the more we are more emphatic about it, as opposed to wishing or thinking, the more emphatic we are about it, the more it happens and the faster it is observed, not by us only, but by others as well. I'm done.
I want to talk about that for just a minute, being emphatic about it. What does that mean to us? And Pastor, you can help out too, and Nick, I want your input on this too, if you don't mind. So the let there be is more like this is what it's going to be. Again, who would he be asking, or who would it be asking for advice from? So I had some written down as I flipped through my notes. One of the things I had written down was what happens to the energy from dreams. Maybe it was a question I was prepared to ask and never did. But if we are going to be emphatic about this, and that means that we have to be sure of who we are. And again, borrowing something from Nick said, he gave clarity on last week, it kind of really puts into focus setting your intent. Okay. So what does being emphatic look like, guys? And talk to me about being more direct into who you are and what we do with this energy, or the things that we see here.
My understanding of being emphatic is recognizing that which needs to be changed, or that which needs to be brought under the authority of the spirituality of humanity, is simply saying what needs to be done, and not expecting it, but knowing that it's going to take place. Right now, I'm very emphatic about America. I'm very emphatic about America. Has never been a democracy, has never been a nation, has never been a nation state that cared anything about anyone other than white people. And only within the group of white people, there was less care for each other than it was for money, for the wealth that this earth could provide. So I'm emphatic about the declining of this empire and the establishment of a nation. I see that there is a declination of the empire, and I see the building blocks of a nation taking shape. I see these building blocks of a nation taking place when I see an African woman on the Supreme Court, when I see African women in particular in places of authority, giving birth to what needs to be in order to bring balance. When I see women at large saying, "You will no longer control us." When I see the power of old, decrepit white men slipping away from them. When I see that the empire that was formed by men and men only, for men and men only, slipping away from them. And when I say that, I'm not talking about party preferences in terms of Democrats, Independents, or Republicans. I'm talking about across the board. And the reason I say that is because Joe Biden had made a deal with McConnell to appoint an anti-abortion judge to the federal bench. And the day before the appointment was to take place, the Roe v. Wade was overturned, so that they had to back away from that. So when I say old, decrepit white men in smoke-filled rooms making decisions, I'm talking about the total dismantling of a system that is governed by selfish, greedy, violent, masculine energy in favor of what was to be from the beginning, and that is a nation guided by the feminine essence of our being, an essence that is nurturing, and a masculine essence that is protective, both working together as opposed to dominating the other. That's what I see when I talk about being emphatic. I'm not suggesting that this may happen or we may not see it. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying emphatically that's exactly what we are seeing. We are seeing the transformation, the death of an empire and the nation being established, which means that the entire world will change as a result of the rising of this nation, because it was from the shores of this nation that the world was thrown into chaos. I'm done.
Thank you, sir.
This is Barbara. As you all talked, and as you, Ron, as you went back to Genesis, just as a reminder, and Pastor said this over and over, that, to create never means to create out of nothing, because it is what is here that is our material, our fodder for creation. And so if change occurs, motion is an element of change. That implies what you're talking about, the vibrations are elements of change. And so to me, the focus also is what we are putting in the macro in terms of our of voicing and exploring and explaining. These are motions of change. You talk about the winds that were over the deep, like something blowing. There's movement, as you said. When the Creator created and rested, that was an example of movement and rest. Movement and rest. All of that is about motion, movement and rest. So for me, I also see focus as that movement and rest, and that movement is what we articulate. That movement has to do with the attitude shift, the energy shift that we're putting in the universe. As Pastor was talking about how the earth, how this was created by white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, in a sense, the world, in terms of how we think, how money is used, how we put people in categories all of that. That is what's being changed as well. And that is part of what's being recreated as well by what we're saying, as you all just said, African African woman on the Supreme Court, African woman as vice presidential candidate, the part that people of color are playing in the change that's going on. If you look at a lot of the progressives, a lot of that are people of color. And so there's movement in terms of attitudes and thoughts that are being sort of like a wind in a sense, motion. That's part of what the creation is about. And so as this occurs, then the earth simply emulates what we've put in the spiritual. That the earth, we talk about the earth groaning and waiting for us to get it together. Well, the popping up of the islands is simply a manifestation of what's being seeded spiritually in the universe in terms of changing the attitude, changing the focus, changing the thoughts of how a man who is supposed to be the dominator, in a sense, of the earth, how mankind should be protecting and not only the earth but each other. So I see the focus as being intentional as we try to be on these calls about what we say, what we think, and what we do. Thank you.
All right, it's something else I want you talked about the wind, and it made me think about something. When we studied John and looking at returning to beginning, that one verse that was still a little puzzling. We that talks about where he asked the question, and Jesus says, "The wind comes, and no one knows where it comes from or where it's going." So when you talked about the wind come in, can you tie that in? Do you remember the verse I'm talking about? Because you really explained that beautifully. Does my question make sense?
I believe so, but I don't know that I can explain it. But it does speak to the question that you brought up at the beginning of the second part of the conversation when you said that you wrote something down. Where does the energy go when, what did you say? Someone
from dream.
From dreaming.
Yeah, but where does that energy go?
Yeah. And if energy, it's there. It's there to be used based on the vibrations and the focus that we elicit, that we put out there. And so, as I see John, all of this is energy that's out there, just waiting for those who have spiritual understanding, the Elohim that has spiritual understanding, to articulate what it should do. In other words, it's already out there. The Creator created everything at one time, and so if the dream is an energy, everything is vibration. Everything is energy. Everything is vibration. And so it's when he says no one knows where it comes from or where it goes, that is typically mankind doesn't know that. But we who are Elohim spiritually understand that it's always there, waiting for us to move it, I remember when we talked about abracadabra, and I don't mean to make light of it in that sense, but it is to create with our focused thoughts to use that energy to create, to make it move. We change things when things can move. I maybe somebody else, Nick or Pastor, can help me articulate it better. I kind of see it, but I can't really, put it in words. But that's what I see. We don't know where it goes and we don't know where it comes from. Well, usually mankind, when you're thinking of energy from a physical perspective, we don't know where it goes and where it comes from. But spiritually, we understand it. It's always there. That energy is always there, waiting for us to move it and to create with it. So it's not something that comes from nothing. It's there.
Like that. Thank you. Anyone else?
Is this what you were saying, that the reason you don't know where it goes or where it comes from is because it's everywhere? And I'm not sure.
Yeah, Pastor, that's it. That's it. That's it. And I could not say that in words, but that's it. It is. It simply is.
Okay.
Okay. That's that. Hey, I like this. Anyone else? Anyone? I saw something, and I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I have a question. This is Evelyn. So when John said that there's one that comes mightier than I, and I know he was referring to Jesus concept. Are we the mighty too? And how does that go with what we're talking about?
That's what I see, Evelyn. I don't. And please, someone else, kind of elaborate on this as well. I don't see Jesus anymore as a person. I see him as a principle, as a movement, as energy, and the mightier than I. He was the initiator. He was the catalyst for that change, and we are a continuation of it. So yeah, I agree with you totally, and your assessment of it. But please, someone else, if you see more or different, please feel free.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay. Yes, Evelyn, I wanted to respond to that because I think when you see things like "Know ye, you are gods," you will do greater things than I. It is talking about the actual second coming of the Messiah, which is the collective recognition within humanity that we are meant to save ourselves, in the sense that it is our responsibility to learn how to spiritually purify and grow ourselves such that the Christ or messianic awareness, which we've definitely spoken about before, is what forms the foundation for how we operate in the earth. And it is that collective realization within this vibration that we are all participating in that has an exponentially greater effect in the earth than even Jesus did. And he knew that was the case, because when you add more people to that same awareness, the effect can only be exponentially greater. So I believe part of that has to do with the sort of true transformation that humanity is destined to go through one way or the other, and his recognition of the principles that he embodied that are part of all of us, and that we have to recognize within us individually and collectively, and then the effect that we have on our collective vibration and our collective environment, which is a product of our collective vibration. I'm done.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for the details of that. I like that. Anyone else? Evelyn. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pastor.
I see, in regards to, of course, I agree with everything that Nick said. With Evelyn, in terms of the personage of Jesus, it does still exist. And he was indeed a person who existed in bodily form. However, his purpose for being in the earth far exceeds him being in bodily form. The church focuses on the body physically being crucified and resurrected, as opposed to focusing on the purpose for his coming. The purpose for Jesus' coming was not for us to become members of a church. The purpose for Jesus' coming was conceptual totally. And the purpose for his coming was to show us something, to show us how, as Ron alluded to save ourselves. Jesus never came to save us. He came to show us how to save ourselves, meaning how to deliver humanity from the grips of greed. So when we speak of his personage, I agree wholeheartedly that Jesus is a movement that he did indeed bring into existence, a movement not much different than that of Muhammad. He was indeed a person, yet his personage actually exploded into a concept, as did Jesus. And where we are at the moment is moving exponentially into the role of deliverance, as Nick stated a few moments ago. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the clarity as well. Evelyn, does this make sense?
It does, and the reason why I asked that is because that scripture itself just came alive in my spirit. It resonated with me, and now I see why Pastor and all of you say this is the best time and the best place to be at this moment, because we are the matter that is transforming all of these things into, I'll say, positive energy for mankind. So I could just see the pieces of the puzzle coming together, and how important it is that what we're doing, we have to stay on track. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Anyone else, questions or comments? I want to add something to this conversation that we talked about a week or so ago. As we grow spiritually, I think you guys would agree with me on this. Not only will we experience our visions changing and seeing the more and paying attention to that, we also are challenged by personal growth as well. And one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago is we all, in our own way, have negative thoughts and feel negative energy sometimes. And I saw that tied up into this as well. Could it be that negativeness that we feel, or those thoughts that we feel, maybe we are attracting it like a magnet, that we as we seek more for understanding and awareness and becoming of Elohim and understanding. The key to it is understanding the role of our humanity and how that ties us to all of mankind. Can we be attracting those confusing thoughts into the earth, that are in the earth rather, And so a lot of that stuff that comes to us may not be you alone. It may be one for you to grow, one for you to two for you to meditate and move to a higher place, for lack of a better term. But three, also as we talked about with the wind coming in and not knowing where it goes, it's all around us, and it is up to someone to bring light to it. So when we see that, we don't get bogged down or feel bad about it. I think a lot of times, even if we don't know what to do with it, just breathe. Just take a deep breath and just breathe. But that's all a part of that same wind and that same spirit. So I think that kind of ties into what we've been discussing this morning. Any thoughts or questions on that aspect of it?
I do. As you were speaking, I saw that depression, anger, disbelief, doubt, when those things are in the forefront of our thoughts, when we are breathing while they are there and we are embracing them, then our breath creates chaos as we exhale. And it creates chaos in the lives of other people as well. However, when we began to consciously breathe, the efforts of bringing ourselves in rhythm, back in rhythm with the universe, when we exhale, we are transforming our chaotic energy that's not only around us, but that is affecting others as well. So in that we become the source of peace, the source of serenity, the source of what life, the experience that life should be, as opposed to the chaos that's created as we exhale chaotic feelings. Thank you.
Okay, hold on
again,
just for a second. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I was simply saying, so again, Pastor, what you're talking about is intent. All of it comes back to intent in terms of what we do with everything that we attract, because that's the very reason why it sticks. It comes up so that it can be transformed. And if we don't transform it with intentional breathing, with intentional thoughts about ushering in peace, not ushering in, of being peace, of being loving kindness, then we add to the chaos rather than the calm.
Right. Exactly.
Excellent. Because that was the question I was going to ask. I was going to get you to repeat that because that, to me, is extremely important. Please tell me that makes sense, y'all. Did everybody get that? If not, just say I didn't get it, and we'll talk about it some more. That is extremely important, that portion of it. Does that make sense?
And that
It
also
does.
speaks to the question earlier of what focus is, too.
Yeah, I like that.
So,
I really. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just have a question. So when we do this on a consistent basis, that's when we can bring calm to any storm, or we can just bring balance in general. Am I correct?
Yes. What we're actually doing is saying, without saying it, peace be still. Peace be still is really not what Jesus said, because peace is already still. What we're actually saying is let there be peace in the earth. when we do that, because we are the purveyors of peace. We are the ones who are charged with being the peace that the earth experiences. So when we are something other than that because of what we are experiencing, then we become the chaos, that they're a part of the chaos and a part of the creation of that chaos that the earth is experiencing.
And so I can also make it either, I could personalize it for me as well. So when I transform things in my life, when I bring balance, the storms that I have inside of me will no longer be storms. The personal earthquakes I have, they will no longer be personal earthquakes. Because everything starts within. And so when I get calm the storms inside of me, the personal earthquakes, then I can bring balance to the universe, which I am the universe. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
How we doing, y'all? Questions, comments? Making sense?
This is Vermel. Miss Barbara, I think you started to talk about focus, and would you explain that a little bit more? Because I find it interesting. The new phones now have this feature called Focus, and you can use it for various things. So I'm kind of interested in what you mean, what it means spiritually when you talk about focus.
I was simply referring back to what the earlier conversation was when we talked about being emphatic and being emphatic means simply being intentional.
Okay.
Focus is being intentional about what our thoughts and our words and our actions are.
Okay.
And that
Thank you.
intentional has to do with doing it as the Elohim that we are. So that's it.
Thank you.
Sometimes we get so caught up on what someone has said or done until we lose that focus. And our focus is on what we are experiencing as being hurt or experiencing as being taken advantage of or experiencing as being overlooked. When you focus on those things, they have a tendency to become magnified. They become a monster in a teacup. And when we breathe with the intent of bringing balance to those experiences that we are having, or to the source of those experiences, it is then that we truly are bringing peace to the earth with the intent of bringing mankind to the place of balance where it should have been all along. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'm done, Ron.
Questions or comments, y'all?
As you were speaking, Pastor, I was going back to what Ron said in Genesis about unformed and void. That this is every time we do this, it brings us back to the creation beginning. Those things that are negative, those things that are perceived negatively, sort of like are unformed and things we fear things that we don't quite know, that light has not quite exposed to us, and so we allow those unformed thoughts and feelings to be chaotic around us. But it's when we provide the, as you say, the light and the focus and the desire for peace and calmness that you were talking about, Evelyn. That is what pulls it out of this chaotic kind of state. And that's the creation part of it, that we put, in a sense, with, for lack of a better word, so please clean this up, someone who can. We put form and shape around those things that seem to be chaotic, unformed, and against us. And we take those things and create for us the peace, the loving kindness. We can put form and shape to all of those things, that we attract that seemingly are negative, but they may very well not be negative, because what we put back in the universe may be the very thing that someone else needs in their life, so that they grasp who they are. So as we are intentional, every single breath counts in a sense.
I think, Bob, what we were talking about, let me read something and then talk about it a second, okay? This is Ben's translation of Genesis. In the summit, Elohim shaped the skies and the land. And the land had existed in confusion and was unfilled, and darkness was upon the face of the deep water. And the wind of Elohim was fluttering upon the face of the waters. And Elohim said, light will exist, and light existed. Well, in the earth, Elohim shaped skies in the land. Elohim shaped everything above the earth and in the earth, and the confusion existed globally, and darkness covered the face of the earthly spirit, and the wind, the breath, the spirit of Elohim fluttered over the face of that confusion. And Elohim said, light will exist, and light existed. What I'm seeing here is that we are in this first verse, first and second verse, and first chapter of Genesis. We have seen that the confusion is covering the entire earth, and that has rendered it unfilled, meaning that nothing orderly exists in the earth. And we are to shape the spiritual essence of what's in this earth. Why? Because the spiritual essence of this earth has been bastardized by false teachings and by the greed of many. So we recognize this, and what happens? It is our breath, our spiritual essence, that covers the face of everything in this earth, the spiritual essence of this earth. And because we are able to cover it, we are the covering for it. What do? We make an emphatic decision. Light will exist. Peace will exist. Righteousness will prevail regardless of what anyone says. Righteousness will prevail. Therefore, righteousness does exist. Does that make sense?
Yes. And if Earth can be representative of our consciousness, that is what we our level of our awareness increases about who we are and what we are to each other. And when that happens, here we go back to the earth changing, the physical earth literally changing as a result of light being exposed exposed in terms of our spiritual consciousness, in a sense.
And even with that, Bob, it says, and Elohim saw the light. Given that it was functional, and Elohim made a separation between the light and the darkness. So we see the light prevailing. We see the righteousness prevailing because we're seeing a transformation in the physical earth as well as a transformation in the spiritual essence of the consciousness of this earth. We are experiencing that now. And because of that, we are recognizing or have recognized the difference between the light and the darkness. And because of that, we have brought into being the light, the understanding of the consciousness of the earth that is sparking a movement of righteousness and peace and justice for all. We have sparked a movement where a George Floyd is seen all over the world, and justice and righteousness for him is being fought. For when we see the way that the female has been treated and denigrated in this earth, we've seen that, and our desires, the light that we had determined will exist, has now formed a movement. And that movement that it is formed is one of the feminine energy saying no more. We will not exist in a vacuum anymore. We will not be denigrated anymore. So all of this, what I'm seeing now in the beginnings of Genesis, these verses in Genesis are the things that we are experiencing right now. Can you see it?
And the movement going on from where you adding to what you said, and the movement began in Genesis when the work was done and it rested. That's when the beginning of the movement occurred. That's when the template was laid for us as creators too. So when we try to separate things, things are good when they think they are blended together and things are just going along. It's when you separate it that you might see the pain, a mother and a child together, the child in the womb. Everything is going along. It's at that moment of separation that the mom may have discomfort and pain, and that the child may feel, I'm separated from where I was. I was comfortable. I was cozy. But it's a necessity for the growth of the created being, the child. And so everything that we're doing here, movement is that opportunity to separate those things and create the order, just like was done in Genesis when light was separated from darkness, when earth was separated in a sense from the sky. It all had its purposes to show us how to create. Not that one was bad and one was good. No, that wasn't the issue. But it created a space for us to be the creators as well. And I'm not saying that the way I see it quite. So someone else, Pastor, someone else.
Yeah, but Barbara, what you're saying that I can concur with is that it's like an energy at rest, vibrating, with this energy that is in motion, that the creative utterances now are being manifested, and it's all connected in that oneness. So, it may have been that we may have been at rest for a time such as this, where that vibration now has that, explosion in a sense that we can now, see the manifestations of us understanding the utterances that we speak. If that manifests a little bit, if that resonates, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's the starts and the stops. It's the starts and the stops that create the motion and gives us the fodder for creation, for continued creation. So yeah, it resonated with me. Thank you.
Well, I see that, and I also see that it says the 27th verse says, "And Elohim filled the man with his image." Think about that. Elohim filled the man with his image. With his image, he filled him, male and female. He filled them. He filled the man and the woman. He filled the masculine and the feminine with its image. With this image. Which means that he made them exactly like him. Now, that was the 6th day. Nothing moved. There was no vibration until the 7th day, when his business was complete. Once his business was complete, everything began to move. Motion was brought into the into the mix, and at that point, the vibration of the universe and everything in the earth was synchronized. And now, that synchronicity of the earth was in the hands of the created human. And that synchronicity was in the hands of the created human. And that created human had to learn how to maintain that balance of that synchronicity based upon its spiritual essence. Why? Because the earth's essence, the consciousness, was to be synchronized with that of the spiritual. It was to be synchronized with that of the one who created us, so that as above would be below. However, that synchronicity could not be given to us by our Creator. That synchronicity was shown to us. And the chaos in the earth was no different than the chaos in the beginning. And that chaos was to be brought to a place of balance, a place where it mimicked, a place where it became the image of the spiritual essence of everything that exists. The physicality of this consciousness was supposed to be exactly like the spiritual consciousness of our Creator. And we are now in the process of bringing that synchronicity into existence in this earth realm. So I see that that's where we are now. And all of this, the movement started with the man having been, the breath being breathed in the man's face, his countenance, which is another story for another day. It started then, and it has not come to a place where the development of this synchronicity was taking place until now. Jesus came to show us how to be delivered from a chaotic world so that we could be synchronized with our Creator. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Any questions or comments about that?
This is Audrey. Sorry. I have a sort of a question. So what you're saying is that when the Genesis let there be, for those first 6 days or whatever, was was the Creator putting the potential energy there, and then on the 7th day, the potential energy turned into kinetic energy? And
Yeah.
I'm sorry for using the
I understand what
scientific version, but anyway, but that's what I hear you're saying. And then, and it's like that there's the potential energy is always there. It's just that when we become the purveyors of the let there be whatever, we're just accessing that potential energy and putting in the movement, so to speak, transferring it to kinetic energy.
May I insert something here? It's not that
And I after you too, Pastor, me too.
not that we are recognizing this energy. It's that we are recognizing that we are that energy.
Right.
We are the energy that transforms.
Okay,
back
that's
up,
what
y'all,
that's
just
what
for
I,
sake of clarity.
go ahead, Ron.
Kinetic, just add that in, define the differences between the types of energy you're talking about, just for sake of clarity, when you talk about kinetic energy. Please.
Potential energy is the energy that's there when something is at rest. It's not doing anything. And kinetic energy is the energy of movement. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And what I would say is, what makes it even clearer to me is if you instead not say potential energy, but energy potential, because energy is there, and energy has the potential to be created. So not potential energy, which implies that, well, it might be there or not, but energy potential. Does that make sense? Does that resonate?
Yes.
Okay.
Fine. Okay. But energy potential energy, it all means that it's already there. It's already there. It's always there. You can say that we are energy, but sometimes it's at rest. It's not doing anything. But I also wanted to ask about the dream energy, because I think the dream energy is always there too. It's a kind of energy potential. All we have to do is recognize that we are that. And then, and the recognition is what makes it move or become the kinetic energy.
Audrey, I think we didn't really recognize it, that we are it, truly recognize it, until we begun to embrace the reality that we are filled with the image of Elohim. That we are, when we begun to embrace that we are Elohim, because that's who we were created to be, that's when the energy began to move or to vibrate at a higher frequency than what we had seen. Our desires started the vibration when we desired peace and harmony, when we talked about the idea of misogyny, racism, all these things that need to be dealt with. I believe that was the beginning of the movement, but the higher frequency of this movement we saw with the embracing of being Elohim. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, because as Elohim, we become the purveyors of the let this be this or that or whatever. Not that we intend to shape it, but that we intend to bring about the love and kindness that mankind needs to move forward spiritually.
I think we are shaping our desires, but we're not shaping how we get them. Example, we understand that our desires are for peace, love and kindness and peace, etc. So what we're actually doing is saying that love and kindness will exist. Righteousness will exist. Now, how we get to that place is the thing that we are not shaping. That makes sense.
Agreed, yes.
I'm done. Unless there are
I
questions.
I was just going to add, I have written down here, what is love? Love is all of me. It's not saving any of me. It is all of me. And that is the shaping. And what we're doing today, or should I just say, could that be the shaping? What we're doing today, we're emptying out what we have, what we see, the place of consciousness that Elohim has brought us to. We're emptying out and bringing clarity to what we see and behold in the earth. And we are not changing anything that has been observed. We are just bringing clarity to it. So as we shape this, we're shaping it in love, because our desire is the loving kindness that Audrey talked about. So the shaping is just emptying out who you are, giving all of that and not holding back anything.
And may I suggest that the shaping, we shape our desires, but we don't know how we get to that. May I suggest that the we don't know how we get to that part of it is what seems to be things going so much worse. Those mother's birth pains seem to be so much worse and so much more frequently just before the child is born. So it just seems that way in terms of spiritual. And that's a perspective that we need to probably hold on to, that this is part of the, we don't know how we get to that. We just know what our desires are. And so in getting to that, the chaos that's whirling and beginning to take shape, if you will, might seem that it's not shaping, but we are Elohim. So we know that it doesn't matter how it appears. We know what is being done.
Yeah.
Ron, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Elohim is Elohim. And when it says in Scripture, Genesis, let there be, why did Elohim say, let there be blank, blank, blank? And my question is, when we're about to do something, we don't say, let there be this or that. And my question is that the right word to have, or what we read, let there be?
No.
Well, I
don't.
I was going to turn and let Pastor, we spoke to it earlier. I agree with you, the wording there. Pastor, you want to take that one, please? You talked better.
Not let there. Doesn't say let there be light. He said the light will exist, and light existed. So he willed it into being. And when he saw that it was functional, meaning that it was doing what it was supposed to do, then the light was separated from the darkness. The light the light is separated from the darkness. So everything that was spoken in an emphatic way. And the reason it says that, and he said, is not because he verbalized it as much as the experience, the internal experience of its desires. And the internal spirit of his desires was that everything be brought from this place of confusion. Because remember, prior to saying this will be in existence, there was confusion in the consciousness of the whole earth. Does that make sense, Evelyn? So
I'm thinking about it.
Evelyn?
Yes.
I just wanted to add that we do say that, but we don't come from a place of knowing, because we say, well, I hope I'm gonna be able to do this, that, or the other, or I wanna do this, that, or the other. We don't come from a place of knowing. We come from a place of doubt, basically, which is why it doesn't seem to work for us, if you see what I mean. But we do say, let there be, but we don't come from a place of knowing. We come from a place of doubting ourselves when we say, I hope I can do this, or I want to do that, but do you see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, now I do, because I remember, I think when we say, let there be this, or let me do this, I remember when I got out of my car and I said, let me go change the energy of the agency. And that's when a lot of people got fired or whatever, and things started to change. So,
and you were emphatic then, though.
You did not say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said it's going to change.
Yeah, so that puts the energy in motion, I guess.
Exactly.
Yep. So,
Okay.
And even when we say we're taking charge of our lives, we say, I'm taking charge of my life, and I'm hoping that things are going to work out. No. If you're in charge of your life, then what you're saying is what's going to be. That's it. And you're in rhythm with the universe with that desire. Now, you say, well, I've done that, but it didn't work out that way. Why? Because the universe saw that it was not beneficial, meaning that it would not function for everyone, for humanity. Your role after this taking place would not be functional for the whole of humanity. Keep in mind, it says light will exist, and light existed, and it saw that the light was functional. Functional how? Functional in its existence for the purpose it was brought into existence. Does that make sense?
It does, but you're not talking about my situation. You're talking about when things does not change, when you say, sometimes when you say, let me do this, or I'm going to do this, that things doesn't change because it's not what the universe wants or whatever. But in my situation, I changed and mankind benefited from it, even the people at the agency.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense, because it's not just for Evelyn, it's for the agency. Changing of the energy in the agency does not just affect you. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I just wanted to be clear on that, because when you said you, I just didn't want people to get
I'll give you something else.
confused.
I'll give you something else. If I say that my desire is for your energy to be altered, right? If my desire to be altered is for the benefit of everyone around you, that's a difference than me wanting to be altered because of how you treat me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the way you approach me may be the way I need to be approached. However, the change of that cannot be just for me. It has to be predicated on our desires for humanity. Everything. Jesus did not deal with what he wanted. Jesus dealt with what humanity needed. And what did humanity need? Humanity needed to understand that it was sick and needed healing. Humanity needed to understand that it was blind and needed to see. And Jesus did these things in a physical way to tell us about a spiritual truth. And we embraced the physicality of the change, but we never embraced or understood the spiritual truth about it. And now that we see the spiritual truth about it, not only are we able to deal with it, but we are able to deal with it in the way that Jesus did, because If we only see the physicality of it, then it becomes about us. It becomes selfish. Does that make sense?
It does. And I felt, and to this day, I still feel people don't laugh anymore. People, it's like we're in a barrel of molasses. We're moving very slow and people are not happy anymore. And I just felt that we all are in this together and, you know, it was time for a change. So that's why I made a conscious decision. I got out of my car. I'm going to change the agency, the energy in this agent. And that's, once I said that and walked through those doors, things started happening that same day.
Now take that, multiply it to humanity. Use it exponentially to encapsulate the whole of humanity and see what kind of changes that be.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I love you. Yeah, I love your question and your example. Although we had talked about that, you brought up the question again, and it brought back to your memories the example of that question. You've already lived this, and the beauty of it, you see the results of it, and it gave us opportunity to talk in more detail what it means to be emphatic about something. So as we recognize who we are, that's part of walking in this. That's part of being what we're talking about and giving of self and being Elohim and changing the world. Beautiful example. Beautiful example. Anyone else, questions or comments? Okay. We're about in a couple hours anyway, so might be a good chance to opportunity to call it a day and pick up here tomorrow at 11 a.m. Okay. If there are no more questions or comments, everyone have a great day, and I look forward to talking with you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
I enjoyed it.